Hi, friends. Welcome to episode number 25 of our procurement and sourcing series. In this episode, we will discuss in detail about the configurations of vendor rebate agreement in Microsoft Dynamics 365 Finance and Operation. Make sure that you watch the video episode number 24 before getting into this episode number 25 of vendor rebates. With that note, let's quickly jump into today's topic. So we will continue in the part 2 where we will be discussing in detail about vendor rebate agreement. So already we discussed the entire process of vendor rebates and please do check out the part 1 before coming to part 2. So in this episode number 25, we will be discussing about the rebate agreement creation and what are all the various fields and options which you need to cover in order to complete the rebate agreement creation process, because all your terms and conditions which you have negotiated with your vendor need to be applied over here, right? So this is the Microsoft Docs page. I will also share the link for this page in the description. Please do check out the same if you want to navigate to this particular Microsoft Docs page. So first of all, we will navigate to procurement. We will go one by one so that the whole idea is you need to understand about the configuration of vendor rebate agreement in this part 2. So first you need to navigate to procurement and sourcing, vendor rebate agreement. I will also shift between Dynamics 365 and this Microsoft Word doc so that it's easy for you to understand the process step by step and all the options: procurement and sourcing, then vendor rebates and rebate agreements. And before creating a rebate agreement, make sure that in the previous video we already discussed about creating the rebate program types. So which is the first most important step. Make sure that you create a rebate program type. So maybe I will also quickly show you here. You can create a vendor rebate program -01, and these are getting defaulted from the parameters. Vendor rebate. Let me save this, and then now all you have to do is you can go to vendor rebate and create a vendor rebate agreement. So this is the form which helps you to configure the header level and line level details of the vendor rebate agreement. So let's check this one by one. First, in order to create a new rebate agreement, click on new in the top, and then by default you can see the workflow approval status is not submitted, but it has to be approved because only the approved vendor rebate only used in your purchase order lines. So workflow approval status is currently not submitted, and here we need to capture the rebate program ID which we created right now. So this rebate program ID helps you to cascade the rebate program accrual account and rebate program expense account. So that's where we are primarily configuring the rebate program ID. And next is configuring the vendor code, for which particular vendor code this rebate program is applicable, or this is applicable for all the vendor codes. Some cases you can also configure the group, which we discussed in the previous episode. So in this case, let's say I am selecting a specific vendor, Acme Office Supplies, and you can also select the specific item or a group of items, or for all the items. Let's say if it is a table, then it will be a specific item. And another important option over here is if you select the option selection, then you can see there is a separate section which populates over here. So here you can also select multiple items which you can add as part of this rebate agreement. So it's not just you want to select a group, but if you want to take items from multiple groups, in those cases also you can use this option of selection. And then for those items which are available in multiple groups, still you will be able to have this vendor rebate program. And if it is all, then it is applicable for all the items. So currently I'm selecting table, so that is applicable for a specific item, so let it be Surface Pro. And the next field is unit. So unit, you need to select the appropriate inventory unit. So in this case I'll just keep it as each's, that is fine. And here by default it will be inventory unit, or in case of catch weight unit, you need to capture it as catch weight unit, but we will retain it as inventory unit. And the next important condition is you need to specify either the minimum quantity or the minimum amount which is applicable as per the policy which you have with the vendor for this rebate. So let's say the minimum quantity is 1000. If maybe 1000 is a higher value, maybe let's say minimum quantity is 200. So for which this particular rebate program is applicable, I can also provide a minimum value, maybe $1,500. So for the minimum value for which this rebate program is applicable. So the moment I capture the minimum amount, you can see the minimum quantity becomes 0. So similarly, if I capture the quantity, then the amount becomes 0. So which means either you can have minimum quantity or the minimum amount, not both. So the next thing is like can have a specific date for which this policy, this vendor rebate agreement is applicable. And you can provide an expiry date, or it is not if it is not if it's valid over a period of time, then you don't need to provide an expiry date, or you can simply provide an expiry date based on your requirement. So from which date to which date this is applicable. So this is the header section of the vendor rebate agreement. So once the vendor section is created, I click on save. And then once if it is saved, all these field options like rebate program ID, vendor code, vendor selection, whatever you have given here will be populated once you add the line. Like once you add the line, you can see the appropriate vendor selection items are picked over here. So you know for which particular line item you are actually configuring the from value and to value. From maybe from 10 quantity, maybe in this case we have given a minimum quantity of 200. So for 200 to 500, what is the rebate applicable? Maybe 2%. Maybe let's configure like 200 to 500, a rebate value of amount per, this is amount per unit. You can also configure it as percentage, or if it is a fixed amount, you can also do that. Maybe let's say it's a fixed amount for which maybe $100 is applicable. Another line, let's say from, so in this case 2 value is always excluded. Make sure that the 2 values is always excluded. So let me give it as 501. So from 200 to 500 it is $100, and maybe from 501 to 1000 it is a fixed amount of $200 is eligible. So let me change it to a fixed amount. So this is the configuration. And also if you want to have this configuration at the dimension level, then under the dimension section you need to configure the appropriate site value. So all the product tracking and storage dimensions are available here. If you want to have these configurations of the rebate program at the dimension level, then that is also possible in Dynamics 365. So next important thing is we'll get into general tab. So what are the options which we have in general tab? So some of these are available over here, but all of these are available under general tab. So we will go through the options available in the general tab one by one, right? So since if the approval required is enabled, this particular vendor rebate program will not be active until unless this is approved. So that's where the approval required is yes. You can disable it, but it is always recommended to enable this toggle. So approval required, once this rebate agreement is created, you save it and then you have to validate it. So once it is validated, then the status will be automatically changed to approved. So in the general section, let's go one by one. So if you want to validate it, this need to be validated. So this way you cannot enable this manually just because we have enabled approval required. So this need only when we click on validation, and then when the user clicks on OK, that appropriate user who has validated, the name will be populated over here, and this will be automatically enabled only when we validate it. We will quickly see that. And then you can capture the currency in which you want the rebate to be accounted. So that particular currency code, you can capture it over here. And approvals we discuss. So whenever any rebate program is created, it has to be approved. Until unless it is approved, you will not be able to use it in your purchase orders. And then the next option is line breaks. Rebate line break type can be quantity or amount. So here you can see, so what is the type of either it is based on a volume or based on the amount by which you want to have this configuration. So this rebate line break type primarily refers to this. So you can change the break type to amount, but make sure that in the overview you provide appropriate minimum amount in that case. And the next thing is regarding tax. For the rebate value, whether the $100 or $200, do you want to calculate the tax, then make sure that you assign the tax code and then enable this taxable icon, sorry, taxable option radio button. Otherwise the tax will not be calculated. And then you can see the minimum quantity 200, whatever we have given here, that it gets cascaded to this particular option 200, and minimum amount is 0. That is fine. And unit is each, which actually fetched from the unit what we have captured in the overview section. And the next option is unit type. Unit type can be inventory unit or cash weight unit, which we already saw before. And this is something which is very important. Unit of measure rebate option, which can be convert or exact match. What it exactly means is, if we go to Microsoft Docs, so it clearly says a purchase order line qualifies for vendor rebate per the rebate agreement. So every line qualifies for the rebate agreement. You will receive a rebate regardless of unit of measure that is applied on the line. So if you want the unit not to be considered, then you capture it as convert. But to qualify for a rebate, a purchase line must have the same unit. If you want the same unit of measure as specified in the agreement, then you need to make sure that it has to be the exact match. So that's where you need to configure that. Either it can be convert or exact match. If you keep it as exact match, then the system during the purchase order line will check whether the same unit eaches is used. So let me keep it as exact match. And we saw this rebate program accrual account, which accrues whenever the invoice gets posted into a specific account, and this will be that account. And there is a expense account in which the interim expense is posted, and then it is transferred to the vendor balance. And the payment, how do you want to take this payment from? Either it should be on the gross amount or the net amount. So the difference is, in case of vendor rebates, so the gross amount is the rebate is calculated based on the gross price of the item, that is the overall value of the item. But in case of the net amount, the rebate is calculated based on the net price, that is after all the discounts being applied to the respective purchase order lines. So what is the methodology which you want to use, whether it is based on gross or net, that you need to configure it over here. So whether it is gross or net. And then you have the cumulative purchases by. So this is very important. So this is where the logic of whenever the rebate claims generated, we saw it is in the state of to be calculated, right? So that is because it, if you capture in invoice, then by default in Dynamics 365, if you see, because I just want to show you the definition. um, yeah, when a claim is generated, its status is set to be calculated. So if you have seen our previous video, you can see that when the claim got generated, it was by default in the status of to be calculated. If the rebate is granted on a cumulative basis or calculated, if the rebate is granted per invoice, see, so if it is granted per invoice, then it will be in the status of calculated, because after posting each and every invoice, the rebate gets generated and it is also calculated. If the status of the claim is to be calculated, the claim must go through a calculation process that is handled by cumulate function. So make sure that if you want to calculate each and every time, then you need to capture accumulate purchases by, which is other than invoice, which can be week, month, year, or lifetime. Or you can also have a customized period for which you can calculate the value. So let it be invoice, then the vendor account and the vendor selection. This is also we have seen in the before page itself in the overview section. So this is the similar one which is shown over here. And then item code, item selection, start date, expiry date. And this is something which is very important, calculation date type, which can be created or requested delivery, which actually means if you check over here in the Microsoft Docs, so it can be either created or requested delivery, which is actually used for the creation of the purchase orders, with the purchase order creation date based on which the rebate agreement need to be validated. So we are providing a start date and end date, right? Or whether you want to use the requested receipt date, whether you want to use the receipt date to calculate the rebate, or it should be based on the creation of the purchase order. So how you want the validity period in the rebate agreement to work. So even though we have provided the period, that from date and the to date should be whatever the date we select, whether it should be based on the created or should be based on the requested delivery in the purchase order. So that's the overall idea. Let me go back. Let me save this. So let me go. Because we have not validated it, I'll click on validation. So right now it picks the ID. Let me click on OK. Now you can see the status got moved to approved. So now you can also see the validated Boolean is automatically enabled along with the user ID. So these are all the various options which you need to make sure that you configure accordingly in the rebate agreement. Now let me go to the purchase order. Maybe I will duplicate the tab. So here we are going to create a purchase order. So let me open the procurement and sourcing module, purchase order, all purchase orders. Then I'm going to create a purchase order for Acme Office Supplies for the item selection 1000. And we want to see whether the rebate value is correctly captured or not, right? So let me create a new purchase order. Office Supplies, site and warehouse. Click on OK. So now we will give a quantity of 199 first, because we have actually given the configuration from 200. So let me give a quantity of 199. Uh, yeah, does I have entered wrongly the item number? So for 199, so let me save this and go to view price details under purchase order line, view price details. So let's see whether there is a rebate. So we cannot see any rebate created, but let's go back and revise the quantity to 200. Let me save this again. Then let me go back to purchase order line, click on view price details. So now I can see there is a vendor rebate which got generated for 200, and the starting rebate is total value is a fixed amount of 100, and that's how this is actually the rebate for per quantity, so which is actually 0.5, and this is for the overall, because we actually gave the configuration as a fixed amount in our rebate agreement. And let me go ahead and change the quantity from 200 to 550. So now the rebate which is applicable to us is $200. So let's see. Yeah, the rebate value got changed and the fixed amount of $200 is applied. So this is how, then you need to follow the same process which we discussed in the previous episode. Make sure that you watch the episode 24 before coming to this episode number 25. So that's how you primarily configure the vendor rebate agreements and then process the vendor rebate claims.